Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and you guys have already seen my triple build of the structure deck, but this is an actual competitive build, and I'm going to show you guys the core build of what you can do with this deck. Although this is a mid-range deck, not so combo-y, this deck can grind pretty hard if you manage your resource properly. If you guys are going to enjoy this deck profile, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button, hit subscribe, ding notification bell. Appreciate you guys for doing so, and let's just kick this one off so you guys are ready for the weekend. So for this core build of Branded Despia, I'm trying to keep it as pure as possible, but I've also applied my YCS experience into building this deck. This deck is really powerful, even if you don't run it with the adventure package, although I would say that the adventure package definitely makes it a lot stronger, but you're gonna have to shell out a lot more money for it. And if you also want to play additional ways to extend with the deck, you can play the Fright for package. I'm just avoiding those two packages for now, just to see what this deck is capable of on its own, but once I've adapted to it, I'm going to probably shove in the adventure engine. I'm just not gonna lie here, but this is actually really strong as well because it's meant to break boards. And here we go, starting off with Alibra, Jester of Despia. Search it for Branded Fusion, branded in red, branded opening. It's just one of your best cards. If you branded opening in this card, this is the ideal opening because you get to go into your branded fusion and all your plays kind of stem from that one card. So that's why this is the most important monster. And don't forget about the graveyard effect. All right, guys, it does come back and does negate a monster effect. Next, our fusion material monster, Fallen of Albaz. Namely, you're just going to put in the graveyard by Branded Fusion. But just one key thing to remind you guys of that's most important for this particular card is that if you do send a Titanic Clad or a Sprint or any of those monsters that will summon a Fallen of Albaz out of the deck, don't forget, if your opponent leaves a DPE on the field, you can use this to fuse with the DPE, especially if the DPE already burned its effect. This is super crucial because now you'll be able to fuse with it. You can go into Lubellion, and it really screws your opponent over. Next, we have Despian Tragedy. I'm playing 3 copies of this. I'm not running the Fright for engine. If you're running Fright for engine or any other engine, this is the one card that you would cut down to 2 because you have the additional other engines to actually play with it. And in any case, I'm playing 3 because I want to see this with branded opening. I want to dump this card away. I want to fuse this card away so I can get additional free cards, and that's why this card is super important, and I like seeing it. If there was like Edgem, like Chain or whatever, of course Edgem Chain, you send Chain to the graveyard, it kind of does the same thing. It provides you with additional cards, and hand size maintenance is going to be one of the harder things to achieve with this deck. Next, for some additional tech cards, although this is a tech card, this is not. This is a mandatory play. You should be playing Ad Libitum because it's able to revive and reset your Mirror Jades. It can revive your DPE, it can revive your Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So this one's probably one of the more important ones, especially if you can set up your combo early. This is a mid-range deck but has many little small size combos, and this is usually involved in a lot of them. And Dramaturge, this is kind of like a tech card. I mean, it's like a 3k beat stick, but it's technically negation if you can provide additional fusions, or if your opponent goes into like synchros or anything in their extra deck, it does give you a targeted negation with a 3k beat stick. This is also kind of like anti-super poly tech, because if you leave it on the board, the super poly this just comes back because it was used as a fusion material, and this is why it's pretty useful. But additionally, this is probably one of the cards I might cut. Next, we have the Light Hex Sealed Fusion. Everyone's playing this card. I'm not gonna lie, I even tried out not playing this. Instead, I just played like Dark Magician, and you can still do some pretty wacky lines, and you can still go into a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. It's just that it's going to cost you an additional card in your hand to do it. Unless, of course, you toss the Dark Magician into the graveyard early, then you can do it without costing yourself a card. But in any case, when you do use the Dark Magician as a fusion material, you get to pop a card, you get to burn, you shorten the reach, which is why I'm contemplating. But the additional bonus for this card is that it can also replace the name of Fallen of Albaz, but not with Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion, you have to use Fallen of Albaz as Fallen of Albaz, but if you're using like Lubellion or you're using Albion, then this can count for a Fallen of Albaz and replace the name. So that's why this is alright, but I kind of prefer Dark Magician from time to time because it just makes it so that my opponent really hates it. Like, you can already deal the damage. Imagine burning your opponent and then putting 2 Masquerades out. Now they're really in trouble because how many cards are they going to be able to activate? Now, Destiny Hero Package, I am playing it. Why would you not play this card? It's just insane. This is like the most broken, most key card of the current format. In terms of hand traps, we have to load ourselves with hand traps in the current format because that's just how it is. Thanks, Adventure Package. So play 2 Ghost Ogres. This is like a 40 card deck, so I don't want to overload where I'm like over hand trapped, and this isn't exactly a 1-card combo deck either, so we gotta minimize where we can. Ghost Ogre is only really good against, say, the Griffin, good against the Adventure, Faithful Adventure, so you can pop those off. That's mainly what it's for. Triple Ash to deal with Fusion Destiny and all sorts of other generic searches. I'm playing triple Ghost Bell for the mirror match because Ghost Bell hits hard. It hits Lubellion, hits Albion, hits Branded in Red. In other words, this will provide you a way to play during your own turn, especially if Branded in Red is set on the field. So that's something you have to be very careful because they have to add a card back to use it. So if you just negate it, you don't have to deal with the Branded in Red no more. Next, we have just double Veiler, mainly for just stopping Predaplant Vert Anaconda, and yeah. Okay, now we're going to the spell cards. Triple Branded Opening, the most powerful spell card to get yourself a free Alibur, but sometimes you might summon something else out if Alibur is already in your hand. Like you can set yourself up with a Dramaturge, or you can even set yourself up with a Despian Tragedy if you need the material. Then we have the Branded Fusion, insane card. This is just, what, who thought fusing from the deck is okay? I mean, one card fusion from the deck locks you into fusion. The whole extra deck is fusion. Branded in Red, this is one of the best tech cards because it's one card that goes into Chimera, and it also lets you chain block that Chimera as well, as long as you throw a Despian Tragedy in there as a part of the material, or Ad Libitum, and then you can just pop cards, draw cards. You don't have to worry about Ash negating your Guardian Chimera. Next, we have Despia, the Theater of the Branded. I actually like this card. Not gonna lie, this card is fantastic, especially when it comes to a grind game. If you burned a lot of your extra deck into the graveyard, this card turns all of your Aliburs into like crashing material. It turns them into Monster Reborns to some degree because it states on the card, if a face-up non-fusion fairy monster you control leaves the field by the opponent's card effect or by battle, target one level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Therefore, you can summon back your DPE, you can summon back your Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. It's pretty useful if you ask me. You can use each effect once per turn, so luckily this is not like a one effect once per turn like OEOPT. This one is just there for you to abuse, and especially when you're bringing back Alibur, if your monsters are actually dying, then this card is going to help you cycle and help you grind. And it's also your additional poly, because if you played Fright for Patchwork, you might not be running this. You might be just using the additional polymerization, and you probably play more Guardian Chimeras because Chimera is going to give you the additional value, but you're going to be getting the value through Despia Theater. So that's my preference at the moment. And then we have, of course, Fusion Destiny. Fusioning from the deck is great. And then we have Super Poly because we don't want an opponent to have any response, and you'll see why once we go to our extra deck. And Triple Tactic Talons. This is something that I actually got killed by during YCS. In fact, I lost games whenever this thing resolved because it cracks boards, for one. That's really good. Secondly, it just catches people off guard. And right now, in a format where there is a ton of hand traps, there's DPE on the field, you need to be able to extend further. And Triple Tact is basically always going to go off if you're going to be going second. And it's nice to have. It's really nice to have this time around. And finally, one Call by the Grave, just in case you get hit by a hand trap that will actually stop you, and this is when you try to play through it. For the extra deck, the entire package is fusion now. I'm not even playing the Predaplant Vert Anaconda because I've never been able to actually summon the card. It was a lot harder than I thought. And by the time I actually summoned it, it was kind of pointless because I already used Fusion Destiny. So it was really, really awkward, and it just ate up a space. I wish it was something else, so I decided to make it something else. So starting off, I played 2 copies of Albion the Branded Dragon. This is one of the ones where you banish from the graveyard. This one doesn't have any additional cost to actually use its effect, which is why it's one of the more useful ones. But typically, you're going to throw this card into the graveyard with Mirror Jade, because in the graveyard, you get to reset a branded spell or trap straight from the deck, which is why it's really useful. Then we have Lubellion, the Searing Dragon. This one, you need the darks. You need like a dark and a Fallen of Albaz. I think this one is pretty good as well, especially if you can just somehow summon it during your opponent's turn, which can lead to an additional fusion summon, perhaps something that's an actual disruption. Again, no real effects here, just additional fusing for this one. And in the first typical summon, you do combo it off by putting it back into the deck. This is a mid-range deck, but mini combos still exist just so they can build somewhat of a board presence. We play 1 copy of Mirror Jade. I want to play an additional copy of this from time to time. I mean, this card here, one thing to note about this card, it is not hard once per turn at all, but it does have an effect where if you use the effect, you can't use it during the next turn after. So in that case, you remove it off of the field and then you kind of resummon it, and it basically completely resets the card. Then that's how you're supposed to abuse this card to give yourself additional banishes, but really it's a banish plus something else, all right? And that other something else is going to be a Titanic Cloud, the Ash Dragon. For this one, In this deck, we don't have any Dogmaticas, so the focus is on summoning up the Fallen of Albaz during the end phase, just so that you can kind of chew up one of your opponent's monster by fusing it off, especially DPE. Now, if you're playing like the Spring kit, then you would not play the Titaniclad. Instead, you would probably play the other one, the Springen Fusion, instead. So that one will help you bring out the Springen kit, giving you the branded fusion. And that just gives you additional options as well, because it can also summon out Fallen of Albaz. Now, for some damage, we have Double Masquerade Dragon. This card is insane. This is like a game closer. When your opponent's down to like the last quarter of their life, you summon out this card, it's a death sentence half the time, because they just don't have enough to pay. They're in crippling debt, and it's basically charging them interest. And then we have 2 Guardian Chimeras for the branded in reds, and helps you draw cards, help you do chain block, help you pop cards. It's also pretty thick. It's 3,300. If you have Poly in the graveyard, it does get better, which is why the Pfeiffer package is so popular within this deck. Now, in terms of like some super Poly stuff, we have, of course, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, we have Predaplant Dragostapelia, and we have Despian Proskenion. So this is kind of like your version of Dark. You just need a Despia monster, a light, and a dark. As Super Poly makes this super ideal, and you can steal someone's DPE, which is kind of great, kind of crazy. And especially in the mirror match, that's where it gets like super crazy, when you can start stealing some pretty insane stuff, because you could target a fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster in your opponent's graveyard. You can banish it or special summon it to your side of the field. And finally, the last 2 boss monsters, we have Red Eyes Dark Dragoon and a Destiny hero, Phoenix Enforcer. And well, these are self-explanatory, but that's why I kind of want to use like Dark Magician, because what else is there that I can use? Like, if I draw into the light, it doesn't exactly help me out at all. So anyways, that's kind of the package so far. I'm just going to teach you guys some basic stuff, and I'm also going to show you guys how to summon a Winda, because, you know, Winda sometimes win the game. I know my current build can't play it, but I'll show it to you anyway. Okay, for the basic play, it's just being Alubra being summoned out, so we're going to normal or special summon out the Alubra, and typically someone could throw a hand trap on here, and that would hurt a lot, especially if you don't have a follow-up, but that's kind of a gamble. Like, you know, Alistair's being summoned out, do they already have the invocation? If you're that good, you always have it. So normal summon out of the Alubra, and you're going to search for the branded fusion. Usually it's a red flag when they don't search branded fusion, because they already have it. And this is kind of the order of cards that you would search if you already have like each of these. Like, if you have branded fusion, go for branded in red. If you have branded in red and the fusion, then go for branded opening, and finally go to Despian Theater. However, there is a case where you would go for Despian Theater first, which is if your hand is loaded with fusion material and you need to unload them into the graveyard to build a solid ball, or solid board. And here we go. So we're gonna go for the branded fusion, and we're going to activate the branded fusion, and we're going to send to the graveyard Despian Tragedy and a Fallen of Albaz. There it is. So that's going to summon out the Lubellion, and Chainlink 1 Lubellion, Chainlink 2 Despian Tragedy. And with Despian Tragedy, we're going to add the ad libitum, but before that we have to pay cost for this, so we'll send 1 card into the graveyard, add the ad libitum, and then we're going to continue to fuse. We're going to fuse the fusion monster and the Fallen of Albaz back together, and that's going to give us the Ice Jade, or Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. Here we go. So now we're going to activate the Mirror Jade, and then we're going to banish our own Alubra, but that's going to allow us to throw an Albion into the graveyard, and therefore during the end phase we get to set a branded in red. So this gets banished. That's fine. And okay, so these are all done here. And finally, during the end phase, we're going to set a branded in red onto the field. If you already have branded in red, you can set any other card that you need, especially that fits that category. So this is our current hand. So during your opponent's turn, if you need to disrupt them, you need to pop a card on the field. Then you go activate the branded in red, and we're going to target our Despian Tragedy that's still in the graveyard. We're going to add this back to your hand, and then we're going to perform a fusion summon using all of these cards. So we're going to use 1 monster and from the field and 2 monsters from the hand, and once we fuse, they get banished, and that's going to summon out our Guardian Chimera. And then that's going to create a multitude of chain links. We got 1, we got 2. I would probably put 2 as the ad libitum and 3 as Tragedy, because Tragedy is probably my least priority here. That provides me with a follow. This provides me with a direct board disruption right away, because it does reset your Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade is not hard once returned, so the banish effect is live again. So Tragedy is going to be able to search, and Tragedy is probably going to be searching for another copy of Alubra. Ad libitum is going to summon back the Mirror Jade because that's what it does. And that's reset now, and Guardian Chimera is going to pop 1 card and draw 2 cards, which is a pretty solid follow-up, considering that reloads your entire hand, and you still have another banish available. And if you have additional hand traps, that's going to be even better. Alright, next I'm going to show you guys the Winda combo. By having an additional copy of Quad Shaddoll Chaos, or you can basically play any Dark Shaddoll, you can get to Winda very, very easily, and it's kind of silly. Especially if you think Winda can be like the win con, then here's how you do it. So you say you normal summon out Aluber. You don't need Aluber, but Aluber provides you with additional beat stick while you're kind of locked under Winda. So with Aluber effect, we're going to get the Branded Fusion. So this is now the Branded Fusion in our hand, and we're going to activate the Branded Fusion. We're going to send Chaos into the grave, and we're going to send Albaz, and that's going to provide us with an Albion, because that's a light Shaddoll monster after all. Albion's effect is now going to kick off, and what we're going to do is we're going to banish the Aluber, and we're going to banish the Fallen of Albaz, and that's going to provide us with the next monster, which is Lubellion. Where are you? Lubellion, you're right here. With Lubellion being summoned out onto the field, it's going to activate, and with it activating, we're going to pay cost, and we're going to put back the Chaos and the Fallen of Albaz. That's going to provide us with a Winda. So with this, we get this kind of board onto the field. That's pretty annoying already because these are 25 and 3k. Very hard to run over. However, the adventure package, if they do have a normal summon and they already have the right, they can bounce this back. And that's kind of annoying if you ask me. So this might not be the most ideal play. And this particular play, it's like opening the nuts. You have Branded Fusion with the Despian Tragedy, which means Tragedy will be loaded into the graveyard, so you get to send something else with the Branded Fusion. But on top of that, since Branded Fusion is already here, we get to search for the additional polymerization cards. So starting off, we're going to activate the Branded Open in the draw phase so that we can't get drolled. And we're going to discard away our Despian Tragedy, and that's going to allow us to special summon out our Aluber. Chainlink 1, Aluber, Chainlink 2, the Despian Tragedy. Tragedy is going to add Ad Libitum into our hand, which is great. And since we already have Branded Fusion, or in the case that you have the other card, you get to add, whichever one that is missing, the Theater or the Branded Fusion. So now we can finally go into our main phase. For our main phase, we're going to activate the Branded Fusion now. So Branded Fusion is going to activate. We're going to send to the graveyard our Fallen of Albaz plus our copy of Hex Sealed Fusion. That's a light and a dark, so we're going into Albion instead. And with the Albion, we're going to activate the Albion, and we're going to be banishing here the light and the dark. And since this is substituting for the Dark Magician, we're going to summon out our Dragoon. This can't really pop any cards, so just keep that in mind. And this is only there for negation. And finally, we get to play our Despian Theater. Despian Theater, we're going to use it to fuse once again. Alright? We're going to fuse these two off, and we're going to put the Masquerade onto the board. Therefore, your opponent's going to start burning, and they have to trade cards. Now, during the end phase of this turn, we're going to activate the Albion, and that's going to set us up with the Branded in red. So there's a lot of disruption here. Like, this doesn't look like too much, but there's actually quite a bit going on already. Remember, we got the Ad Libitum. We have more cards in hand technically because I only showed you guys 3. So technically there's 2 more cards in hand. If we did not get disrupted, you have to play through it in case that you do. So from here, we do have a Branded in red that is live, and we can use this card for sure. Not only that, but we also have like Despian Theater. That means the Aluber in the graveyard can come back, and we can crash. In case Dragoon does die, you can somehow revive your Dragoon with your own cards, which makes the board a lot stickier, harder to break, and your opponent is just gonna, well, they're stuck eating more Dragoon later on anyway. So that's kind of the rundown of this. And so that's all I got for the basics of Branded Despia. If you guys enjoyed this deck profile and learned a thing or two about how to kind of control your board, smash that thumbs up button. If you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, such as how to beat this deck, and I'm going to show you guys even more ways to beat this deck very soon. So make sure you guys smash the subscribe button and ding that notification bell. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one.